Hello, I'm James Ezimoha. Welcome to Africa News. Let's see your headlines. President of Nigeria, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, to visit Turkey on Monday to strengthen relations between the two countries. The Africa Centers for Disease Control and Prevention lifts continental Mpox emergency declaration. And Goma residents are in reflective mood ahead of the first anniversary since M23 rebels captured the city. Nigerian President Bola Ahmed Tinubu will visit Turkey on Monday. The trip aims to strengthen relations between the two countries. Tinubu said the visit will focus on cooperation in security, education, social development, innovation, and aviation. Memorandums of understanding are expected to be signed in scientific research, energy, and military cooperation. A business forum for investors from both countries will also take place. The visit follows Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan's official trip to Nigeria in October 2021. In the Democratic Republic of Congo, mediation efforts continue to falter as fighting persists in the restive east. Tuesday marks 1 year since M23 rebels captured the city of Goma, an event residents say remains a defining and traumatic moment.
The small town of Sake, some 27 kilometers west of Goma, was one of many territories to fall in last year's M23 advance on the North Kivu provincial capital. Now, many residents have returned after spending more than a year in displacement camps in Goma. Among them is Abdul Rahman Kikandi, a 30-year-old husband and father who is trying to rebuild their lives after losing everything to the conflict.
When we came back to live here in Sake, we were not at ease. We were troubled because we did not know which side we were on. We didn't know whom we should pledge allegiance to. But little by little, we got used to the new rulers. And now, by the grace of God, we have just finished a whole year. Although conditions are very difficult, we still have security, and we thank God for that.
While Abdul says he's satisfied with the general state of security, he admits that many families are struggling to get by with little to no economic opportunities available to them.
The M23 has provided us with good security, but what hurts us much more, what bothers us too much, is the crisis, the lack of money. We try things, but nothing works. There's no money, there's no work. Living here has become a new experience. We try different activities, but none of them work. That is the life we currently lead in Sake.
Since the M23's takeover last January, the region's residents have grappled with near economic paralysis. It came as the government in Kinshasa refused to authorize banks to reopen in rebel-held territory, viewing it as enabling the occupation. The breakdown in financial services and movement has left a far-reaching impact on economic activity.
Life is very difficult at the moment. It's really different from the life we had before and the life we have today. Before, our men all had work, and even we, their wives, would go out and find something to feed our children. But now you'll find that someone has no work and his wife, who is trying to set up a business, can't manage it.
Rebel administrators have been trying to rebuild the region's shattered economy and have since tightened control over a slice of the country's vast mineral wealth. They have also imposed levies on traders operating in the region. Meanwhile, the town of Sake is now approaching its first year under rebel administration, and the population is quietly adjusting to their new way of life.
The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention has lifted its declaration of a public health emergency of continental security for Mpox, following a decline in cases of the infectious disease across Africa. Authorities say the decision highlights the continent's improved health security. Our correspondent Chris Ocharimga has more.
The lifting of the Mpox health emergency has brought relief across the African continent. The Africa Centers for Disease Control and Prevention declared Mpox a public health emergency in 2024 after over 80,000 cases and 1,300 deaths were recorded in several African countries. Health emergencies are usually declared for highly infectious diseases that pose a public health risk to other countries in the region. The Democratic Republic of Congo had the highest number of cases and deaths. Scientists attributed the rapid spread of Mpox in the DRC to a new, more infectious strain discovered in a mining town in the country's east in 2024. Sustained collaboration with international partners has significantly reduced the number of cases. Scientists say Mpox is spread through close contact with infected animals or people. Africa's Disease Control Agency says lifting the health emergency does not mark the end of Mpox on the continent, but signals a transition from emergency response to a pathway toward elimination. Chris Ochamringa for A News in Kinshasa.
South Africa's government is facing growing pressure over its handling of illegal wildlife trade, this time involving endangered abalone. Conservationists warn rampant poaching is fueling criminal networks while causing serious damage to fragile marine ecosystems.
At last year's conference of the parties to the Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species, or CITES, in Uzbekistan, the South African government was expected to propose a tightening of global trade controls on dried abalone. Instead, the delegation abruptly pulled the proposal without any explanation, even as illegal harvesting surges and the abalone industry edges closer to collapse. The government has since defended the decision, owing to a lack of consultation with key stakeholders at home.
The legal abalone farming sector had a problem. They, for example, said that declaring it to the list of CITES will have an effect on their markets. The points were raised that maybe we need to have more discussions about this, and that is where we are now.
Known locally as perlemon, conservationists say the highly prized sea snail is being stripped from coastal waters at an industrial scale, pushing the species towards extinction and making the South African government's move deeply contentious.
Tons and tons of abalone get pulled out of our oceans every single year and get shipped overseas. It's basically so big that law enforcement can't keep up with it. In fact, it's done in broad daylight. It's blatant, it's obvious. You can walk down any beach, you'll see the poachers there, and there's a complete disregard for the law.
Wild abalone stocks are critically depleted as demand for the luxury seafood continues to fuel a booming black market, much greater than the legally farmed shellfish. Poaching intensified sharply during the COVID-19 pandemic, exposing deep weaknesses in enforcement and overwhelming maritime security operations, tasked with protecting South Africa's coastline.
I've got maybe 8 guys on shift per night, abalone poaching in the EC1 ranching area where we are mandated to work, and 8 guys against 400 abalone poachers. That's a very difficult task, and you must select small little groups and target them and try and get rid of them and then move on to the next group.
What was once an environmental crime has evolved into some far more sinister. It's now reported to be providing a key revenue stream for organized criminal networks, with dried perlemon commanding high prices in East Asian markets. Conservation groups warn that abandoning CITES controls, which regulates global wildlife trade, removes one of the few effective barriers to illegal exports, risking the collapse of wild abalone populations while entrenching criminal economies along South Africa's coast.
The World Health Organization has warned of an increased risk of cholera and other waterborne diseases following severe flooding in parts of southern Africa. The UN Health Agency says more than 1 million people have been affected across 5 countries in the region. Isaac Lukando has more.
The United Nations says heavy rainfall since mid-December last year has affected approximately 1.3 million people in southern Africa. According to the United Nations, the floods have damaged homes and critical infrastructure, disrupted access to healthcare services, and heightened the risk of waterborne diseases. Initial assessments by the World Health Organization indicate that Mozambique accounts for nearly half of the affected population. The flooding has also impacted parts of Zimbabwe, South Africa, Malawi, Zambia, and Tanzania. The UN Health Agency says urgent humanitarian needs include access to clean water, temporary shelter, and essential health services. The WHO notes that Africa continues to face multiple overlapping disease outbreaks. In 2025 alone, the region has recorded more than 100 public health emergencies and 12 major humanitarian crises, including 4 outbreaks of hemorrhagic fevers. Cholera remains a concern in several countries, while Mpox has recorded over 25,000 cases and related deaths across the continent. Isaac Lukando for A News in Dar es Salaam.
In Sudan, signs of economic life are returning to parts of Khartoum months after the army retook the capital. Markets are reopening and factory work resumes, though experts warn the overall destruction remains vast as fighting continues elsewhere.
In central Khartoum and neighboring Omdurman, traders are reopening shops and customers are slowly returning. They say it offers some hope that the heavy fighting that once gripped the capital and forced millions to flee is a thing of the past.
Al Sajana market is starting to recover, and this is a positive development. We have now emerged from a very dangerous phase. Our goods were stolen during the war, but now we have started to return and open our shops.
Others say the revival of trade has brought a sense of normalcy.
Market activity has returned strongly, especially in Omdurman. These areas have witnessed a revival, as if Omdurman has returned to its pre-war state. There is a smooth flow of services, merchants and goods.
Industry is also showing signs of life. At a flour mill in the Kari industrial area, operations have resumed after more than 2 years of disruption.
We resumed operations, completed maintenance, and restarted production. These mills are producing 1,200 tons per day and employ over 500 workers. This is a promising sign for food production and food security.
But economists caution that these improvements come against a backdrop of massive losses, and many businesses will need huge support to get back on their feet.
Reconstruction requires substantial funds because the destruction of infrastructure and factories was extensive. The industrial sector lost around 75 to 80% of its capacity, and the electricity, banking, education and health sectors were also severely affected. Estimates of war losses are no less than $200 billion.
Analysts say while markets and some services are returning, the weakened currency, damaged infrastructure and disruption to the banking system continue to weigh heavily on Sudan's broader economic recovery. Meanwhile, fierce fighting continues in many other parts of the country as the army and the paramilitary rapid support forces continue their struggle for power and territory. Millions of desperate people await a resolution and peace, so they can join their compatriots in Khartoum in returning to their former lives.
Well, that's all we have today on African News. Thank you for watching and stay tuned to A News.